Hello and welcome to the Gaggle What We Challenge, and if necessary, destroy media narratives. I'm George Szamuely. With me today, of course, is co-founder of the Gaggle, Peter Lavelle. So, Peter, as we had occasion to observe, back in 2002, former Defense Secretary Donald Rumsfeld was challenged, I think, in an interview once, saying, "Hey, you've got all your European allies; they're not going along with your plan to invade Iraq. So where's your great alliance?" He says, "Well, you're thinking about the old Europe. I'm thinking more about new Europe." And it was a very interesting contrast, because they were saying, yeah, the old Europe of France, Germany, Italy, who've always been a pain in the neck for us, yeah, they're not going along with our Iraq plans. The new Europe, Poland, the Baltic states, the former communist states like Romania and Bulgaria, they're on board. They're very enthusiastic. And from that moment on, we have seen how Americans have pirouetted toward this new Europe, because the new Europe can never get enough of belligerence, and in particular, Russophobia. They can never, you can never be Russophobic enough. So we've spoken at some length about Emmanuel Macron's visit to China last week, and in which he talked about the need for European strategic autonomy, in which he talked about how Europe should not get dragged into America's wars. You know, the war in Taiwan, any potential war in Taiwan would have nothing to do with European interests. Now, this obviously caused outrage in Washington, but it also caused outrage in some of these new European states, in particular Poland. So Polish Prime Minister Morawiecki was in Washington last week and declared, "I don't want no stinking strategic autonomy. I want strategic partnership with the United States." And he said, "I don't want no stinking European defense industry. I want to purchase as much as I can from the U.S. Defense industry." And then he declared that the struggle in Ukraine against Russia is a civilizational struggle. In other words,
I'm paraphrasing him. If Kiev loses, it's the end of the West's golden age.
That's right, exactly. The end of the golden age. So he made this, and then of course he said, "Well, I don't want war. I want peace." So the person who tells you he doesn't want war, he wants peace. That's the one you have to be afraid of. So this contrast between old Europe and new Europe is very stark, because Poland and the Baltic states, they're not just going to sit still. I mean, they're working feverishly to try to provoke a war with Russia. And we already know that the United States and the United Kingdom have already been working out all sorts of deals, agreements and partnerships and whatnot. I remember Boris Johnson was going off, signing all these agreements with them. So France and Germany, the old Europe, they're kind of basically now spectators in all of this, and now have to worry about what are the Americans, the British, and the new Europeans going to cook up next. Anyway,
well, it's interesting too, because we also heard last week is that not just in these so-called leaked documents, which George and I talked about exhaustively in the last few days, other than those quote-unquote leaked documents, there really seems to be hesitation about moving forward with Ukraine's NATO membership, and that is coming from Washington, which tells me is that they don't want any kind of resolution in that part of the world. They want to keep it fluid. They want to keep it in flux, because the longer it's in flux, the more they think that they can garner advantages. Now, what's really interesting about the Poles, I lived there for a long time. I had a 2-year Fulbright scholarship there, and I could remember speaking quite a bit with young academics. And Russophobia is always kind of nearby in one form or another. And I would talk about German and French rapprochement, and they really didn't like that. I said, but these two countries, they went at each other's necks. I mean, particularly the First World War. Okay, and then France was defeated in the Second World War, and then the Allies liberated them, and it was time. Very, very intelligent, forward-looking French leadership, de Gaulle, decided, no, we got to put this to an end, okay? It doesn't do anyone any good, okay? The Poles refuse to think in those terms. And the problem is, who allows them not to change their mind? Washington. Right. Washington is an enabler here. Yeah. Okay. And, you know, if Washington, and something George and I have talked about since the inception of the gaggle, is that they don't want a peaceful continent in Europe. If it's peaceful, then it means Russia's defeated, broken up, and all that. That's the kind of peace we're for. Other than that, no, we have our actors here. And so you have, you know, Poland is not a heavy lifter, okay? The Baltic states are not heavy lifters, okay? But they'll yammer on because they, Morawiecki, where was he? He was at the Atlantic Council, everyone. That's what they want to hear from a Polish leader. Yep. And so this is this enabling process that is so very destructive. The odd thing, George, is that if things get out of control, Poland isn't in a very good position. Okay.
No, that's right. Poland is not in a very good position. I mean, Poland is the kind of, they want to provoke a war, but Poland essentially be saying like, you two fight, I'll hold your jacket for you, because Poland's not going to be doing any serious fighting. But it's very interesting that Morawiecki is really going out of his way to antagonize old Europe. So remember, he presented a bill to Sergeant Schulz for, what was it, 1.3 trillion euros. Good luck with collecting on that. And then
for World War II reparations.
Exactly, World War II reparations. And even though that had already been signed and agreed upon back in 1953, but Poland says, "Oh no, we don't agree. We don't accept that agreement." But in any case, since Germany has never paid anyone any World War II reparations, they're not going to start now. But it's it's not exactly.
They don't pay states. They don't pay states.
Exactly. Well, yeah, no, but that's reparations. I mean, they do pay compensation. Individually. For whatever for concentration camps or whatever. But they haven't paid any reparations for damages caused by German military action. So so there was never any question of that. But then he obviously rebukes Macron. And it's very interesting because what he said was that old Europe, he used that terminology, old Europe had tried to work out agreements with Russia, and old Europe has failed. And therefore, we shouldn't spend any time at all listening to what old Europe has to say about Ukraine and how we're going to resolve this problem. So all the talk, Macron in this half-hearted way, when he says, well, maybe we do need some kind of a security architecture, and maybe we don't want to create a military alliance that's directed against Russia. Russia should be part of it. They sometimes, like he and Sergeant Schulz, say these sensible things. But even these half-hearted claims just infuriate Morawiecki and, of course, the Polish government in general. So it's very interesting, how does Poland get away with this? Because the United States and the United Kingdom enable it. They encourage this. So, as we've mentioned, well, Poland is running a very conservative country. Socially, it's absolutely something totally alien to the Biden administration, but also even to the British Tories, who are not really particularly conservative. They don't like any of that stuff in Poland, but they overlook it as long as you're on the right side on the Russia-Ukraine issue.
Well, and that all the more so to keep that on the front burner, isn't it, George? Yeah, okay. Yeah. Okay, that's what they want. And they feel that they somehow will get a dispensation or compensation for taking their obviously very vigorous anti-Russian stance, which again, first of all, that's not how the neoliberalism works. You maybe get a dispensation for a weekend, okay, and then you're going to come right back at you, okay? And Poland's on a lose-lose situation, because if there isn't a security architecture that is eventually agreed to, then Poland is made itself a frontline state. Now, another state that's kind of frontline is Hungary, but it's taken a very different position, okay? Right. And so, this is a craven choice on the part of the Polish political elite, and just being completely egged on. Do you think Orbán's going to get a meeting with the Atlantic Council? No. No. Anyone in the Polish government is going to get the red carpet, and that's what they want. They want This is, again, I think I've mentioned it many times before, but I was in Poland when they entered the European Union. And I said to them, you will always be at the children's table. They will never let you sit at the adult table. Okay? That's the design of it. Okay, and the terms and conditions of your entry into the European Union codify that. Okay, and the Poles have been furious about it ever since. Okay, now what about, we should have a say. And when the Germans and the French get together and say, no, well, we'll take care of it. Okay, you go back, go back and sit down. Okay, they don't like that. Okay. And this is a way they jump-started or leapfrog over an appeal to Washington about how NATO's run, which of course you're going to the boss when you go to Washington, and then in the European Union, which with the whole sanction regime that the Biden administration has pursued, is basically neutralized any kind of EU as a third force economically. So the policy, this is kind of an opening. I mean, the EU is being weakened. The Americans call all the shots in NATO. Look at the reaction to Macron's statement. Oh my God! The entire Western establishment's hair was on fire for 48 hours. Okay. That's exactly what the Poles want. We have the words of reason, And I can remember, George, when I lived in Poland for over 10 years. Peter, you don't understand. You Westerners don't understand Russia. We do. We'll explain Russia to you, and they truly believe that.
Yes, that's right. It's kind of also interesting because throughout Eastern Europe and including Poland, they are all run by German industry. I mean, it's like you go anywhere throughout Eastern Europe, everywhere there's German companies. They run everything. It's like German plants and everything. That's who employs Eastern Europe. German industry. So but again, the Poles kind of pretend that isn't the case. So whatever prosperity, and it doesn't enjoy that much prosperity, but whatever prosperity Poland does enjoy, it is thanks to Germany. But what's also interesting is that what Poland is trying to do here, I mean, Poland is very ambitious, and it's kind of trying to create this alternative NATO. It's what's called the Bucharest 9 or whatever it's called.
Whatever.
The Poland, Romania, Bulgaria, Slovakia, Hungary, which Poland is the leader of this. Now, what does this Bucharest 9 do? Well, they are the kind of the conduit to the United States. They said, hey, we are your best allies. We are the ones who are really ready to do your bidding. We're ready to buy whatever you want us to buy. And we're ready to send forces wherever you want us to send forces. So this is how America is now orienting itself. And so let's see if we can bypass old Europe. It's not clear. We know that the Biden administration didn't like Scholz. They never trusted Scholz. They certainly don't like Macron. This time, their view of Macron is not different from Mark Levin's. That bastard. What are we going to do with him? So Poland is now, making itself. Hey, you want an ally in Europe? You've got us. And of course, the UK. The UK is there, also aligned with this Bucharest 9. So it's a kind of an interesting split that's emerging. We keep hoping, God, can we really get a real split going? But with Annalena Baerbock is making clear that she stands with the Bucharest 9. So whatever Sergeant Scholz himself may think.
Yeah, well, so much for NATO unity, I mean, see, what the Poles are doing on the Bucharest 9 and all that, they're showing what the divisions are. They're putting them on full display. And, they can fob off the Germans and the French all they want. But then the French and the Germans have a lot more sway, just as you've already indicated here. And they can slow walk any kind of thing they want. And then the Poles will say, no, we'll speed it up. Well, then maybe you are the new NATO. Okay, right. We can have old NATO and new NATO. Okay, right. Why should we pay into it? Okay, we want a resolution to Europe's security architecture. Right. You don't. You want to force facts. Okay, yep. I mean, this whole position that the Poles are taking, they're dividing NATO. And believe me, George, publics, the further west they go, the more they say, look, this was supposed to be a slam dunk, but the sanctions supposed to hurt them, not us. Now, what's your next play? Okay. Right. So, I mean, this gambit, the Bucharest 9, whatever assets they have when it comes to NATO, which is pretty scant. Okay. NATO has one major military asset, American air power. Okay, that's what they have when it comes to this conflict. Okay, not tanks, not grenades. Okay, and of course there's the nuclear triad. Okay, the Poles have nothing of the sort. Okay, so it's what they want to do is they want to bypass and please. Yes, rhetorically you can please the Americans love that. Okay, and but it's, at the same time, it's like, well, okay, you guys on the front line. So how many troops do you want to deploy? We can't do that. We no boots on the ground for it. I mean, the logic of it starts getting really kind of spooky. Okay.
Right. No,
Poland, given your history, when have you done well with this kind of stratagem?
It's also kind of interesting that they're kind of giving hints that they would like to create a kind of Poland-Ukraine confederation, or even maybe even a federal state. As a kind of way, well, once you get that off the ground, then Article 5 can go into operation with Russia. But again, that's going to be a hard one to pull off because, again, the rest of NATO is not going to be very happy about a Poland-Ukraine confederation because they think, hey, you're basically now dragging us right into direct war. Article 5 goes into effect. It's also kind of interesting how this Polish leadership cares so little about what's good for them. Now, we know about these Polish farmers. Poland has now said we're banning Ukrainian grain from coming into the country because it's driving Polish farmers out of business. And this is happening throughout Eastern Europe. We talked about this before. Basically, this was a half-baked, ridiculous idea of getting all this Ukrainian grain out, whether through the Black Sea and through roads and railways, the Danube and everything. Oh, yeah, now there's a glut of Ukrainian grain in Europe, and these panicky East Europeans are kind of closing it down. So we don't want Ukrainian grain. So so basically, the Polish government is screwed over the Polish farmers. But it's also interesting how, in all this love for the Ukrainians, the Poles are kind of overlooking. Well, what happened in World War II? I mean, you keep talking about all your history, Apparently, they can never forget 1939. They can never forget, the Soviet Union, the Red Army came in 1945. But apparently you can forget the massacres of Poles in World War II by these Banderites. That you apparently can't remember. But you can remember 1939.
And how hard is it to overlook the number of streets that have been named after Stepan Bandera since 2014, even before that? Well, of course, you get ahead of me, but I'm going to agree with you here. What about these nationalist elements in Ukraine? I mean, obviously, part of their DNA is Russophobia and hatred of Russia and Russian culture and all that. So you want to work for the Polish pawns right now? Okay. How is that going to work? Okay, that is going to be very, very difficult because apparently, according to the Azov people like that, it was Ukraine that liberated Europe. Okay, okay, and I can't see where that is going to go. And you're absolutely right. If you're going to have a unanimous decision by NATO, I mean, Hungary, I don't think they would have under any circumstances agree to protect and extended borders of Poland. Okay, I mean, it would be recognized by some countries in NATO land. Okay, but then, if Poland wants to do that, then Article 5 is it's a sheet of paper. Okay. I mean, if you're moving NATO assets under a NATO flag, a Polish flag, into Ukraine, you're a fair target, okay? And George, these are the kind of fantasy dreams I always heard when I lived in Poland, okay? Okay, always these fantasies. Poland could have averted the Second World War. If they just listened to us, we could have averted. It's like, okay, get another beer, everyone. This story is getting more and more rich. It's really fantasies.
Yes. No, they've always had the fantasies about their extraordinary military prowess. We fought off the Germans. We would have defeated the Germans if we hadn't been stabbed in the back by Stalin. No, they had already been defeated by the time the Soviet Union actually entered the war against them.
How many troops did the Soviets lose? Like less than 100?
Yeah. But there's always the fantasy, and of course we had that moment was a few months ago when, you know, apparently this missile, the Russian missile, had landed on Polish territory. Well, that was a very suspicious episode. You know, it looked to me like there was some scheme that cooked up between Zelensky and the Polish government to make it seem like, oh, a Russian missile had been landed on Polish territory. But you know, there's no question they want this war. They want to provoke this war. This is, you know, this you know, you look at same with the Baltic states. You know, the leaders there, they wake up every morning and think about how can we provoke the Russians more? How can we actually get this war off the ground? Because the Baltic states, they also have fantasies. Lithuania, you know, they have all sorts of, you know, fantasies about you know, returning to their glory days. So they want, obviously they have no strength of their own to affect this. So hey, this is their moment. You know, we can get the Americans involved in this. And yeah,
that's just it, George. How do we get the Russians and the Americans to fight? That's what their fever dream is.
Exactly.
No, we don't. Our troops are for self-defense. Okay, we don't. Our troops won't cross the border. Okay?
Right.
What, we're going to send 3 battalions? What is that? Latrine duty? Yeah. Okay. All right.
Yeah.
I mean, it's like what the Georgians did with the Iraq War. Georgia sent troops. Okay, yeah, they didn't do really any fighting. Okay, and it was just very symbolic. Okay, and they want the fruits of victory. Okay.
Yeah.
So I mean, this is just, it really is fever dream stuff here. Okay, how do we get the Americans to fight the Russians? Oh, but and then there's a scenario, and I've talked about it at the very beginning of the conflict, you know, with Finland and Sweden and all that. Okay, they're not military forces in their own right, okay, because they've had a peaceful coexistence for decades and decades with the Soviet Union and now with Russia. Okay, they've never needed any kind of elaborate military. I mean, basic border defense. Every country needs that.
Right.
But, you know, if they start moving in very lethal NATO infrastructure, well, I mean, NATO membership, yeah, maybe no, but that missile system is a threat to St. Petersburg. I don't care about your Article 5. Okay.
And that's the thing, and that it, you know, NATO, these, you know, Stoltenberg and all these clowns who say, well, you know, NATO's defensive, and then the next minute they say, well, Finland is really adding to the strength of NATO. You know, with Finland in, you know, NATO is now much stronger than it was before. Hey, I thought it was defensive. Well, you know, why is suddenly much stronger than you were before? Stronger to do what exactly? So they kind of, you know, let the cat out of the bag. You know, once they get beyond this sort of parroting this thing, oh, it's purely defensive. So essentially, yeah, you want Finland there in order to, you know, threaten Russia and, you know, to be able to give Americans all the apparatus for, you know, access to the White Sea, to Murmansk, you know, all the, you know, the Bergen Straits, all that strategically vital areas the Americans now get access to. That's why Finland, once Finland's in, now NATO is much stronger. Yeah, much stronger to conduct your aggressive war. Of course, that's what it's all about.
Well, and also at this Polish initiative that we saw that got so much press coverage, Politico loved it, okay, as usual. It is to shore up support for this conflict, which more and more people, as we've talked about, you know, the grain situation, which has turned into such a scam. A small number of people made a fortune off of this, okay? And then you immiserate Eastern European farmers. Okay, you know, a lot of, you know, blood and soil of most patriotism comes from like farmers. Ask the Dutch, okay, when they flex their muscles. Okay,
right, yeah,
and so. What they're doing is they're trying to shore up flagging support, because the longer this goes on, Western public say no one has really explained why this is important to us. Okay.
No.
Okay, we all think that Russia's bad. Of course, everybody knows that. But I mean, why they're bad, but their situation isn't worsening. Our situation is worsening, and also step up. You know, they'll kick their own farmers in the teeth because they hate Russia. This is the kind of fantasy fever we're talking about.
That's right. It's opposed, and you know, you have to say the same thing with the other East Europeans. You know, like the Bulgarians, the Slovakians. They're all absolutely desperate about this situation. Which was, you know, you thought, that was fairly obvious that would happen. I mean, if you're suddenly going to be shipping in all your grain from Ukraine without any import duties, without any numerical quotas, you're just going to dump it all there. What do you think the consequence is going to be? Yeah, they're going to have farmers protesting.
And George, no quality control. That was one of the big issues. Is that, you know, some kind of defective grain was being, because nobody cares if they're sending it there, trying to get paid for it, and then they realize, oh, this stuff isn't healthy. Okay, well, I mean, it's a free for all. People taking advantage of it completely, and it's very dangerous political fire, because you're undercutting the people that you're claiming to support, the most conservative elements of society.
Right. No, that's right. And again, it shows the absolute hypocrisy of the EU. So we have Ursula von der Leyen and the European Commission says, "Oh yeah, all right. Well, we'll pay you some money. We'll buy up your surplus produce." That doesn't solve your problems, because there's still rip-roaring inflation. I mean, rip-roaring inflation means that your costs to produce,
you're actually perpetuating the inflation.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, they can't stay in business. I mean, because what they earn from the grain is just doesn't in no way will compensate them for the huge losses they suffer because of their rising costs due to inflation. So they can't stay in business. Now, of course, we know that the European Union doesn't like farmers very much anyway, but probably quite happy to see all these farmers go out of business. But but again, the East Europeans, they should have known. Hey, no one really gives a damn about you. I mean, no one was ever going to concern themselves about what's good for you as they embarked on this nonsensical Ukraine adventure. I mean, you really think they cared about Bulgarians and the welfare of Bulgarians?
You know, it's part of this kind of psycho history drama. You know, George and I are long-term students of Eastern European history. And you know what, folks? People in Eastern Europe always get the shaft. Always. Okay. If someone's going to get the shaft, somebody in Eastern Europe is going to get it. Okay. And this is part of the psychodrama that Poles lived through, because everything has always been decided about them without them, okay? And I feel bad for them, okay? But great power politics doesn't have sympathy. It doesn't have empathy, okay? It's cruel. It's cold, okay? And those that have the power make the rules, okay? And so this is kind of a bid to get outside, break out of this historical cycle. We're the good guys. Well, good guys sometimes win. Sometimes they lose.
That's right. No, that's right. It kind of is very interesting that they found themselves with the Cold War continued. So the West never gave up the Cold War. Gorbachev said, "Hey, we're giving up the Cold War. That's it. It's over." The West didn't say that. Gorbachev said that. Cold War continues. They didn't say it explicitly, but they never said what Gorbachev said, that the Cold War's over. And so the Poles and the Bulgarians and everyone else, they now became instruments in the West's ongoing Cold War. Well, how did that work out for you? Now you got yourself into a very unpleasant war. You're in the front line. You're getting economically shafted through sanctions, and now your farmers are being driven out of business. So that was a really good bet for you to say, "Yeah, great. Let's keep the Cold War going because it's anti-Russian."
But keeping the Cold War going is not in the national interest of these countries. However, it is in the personal interest of some of these elites, okay? And so, hook your wagon to Washington because they don't like this stuff, okay? So you'll become, a member of parliament, then you'll be a member in the government, some kind of minister, and then in some kind of interval, although you'll get a gig in Brussels, and then, maybe a fellowship in Washington, D.C., and then there's a government change, and then you go back and you're like vice premier, and it's just, it has nothing to do with national interest. It has the personal and egotistical interest of this entire pan-elite group.
Yeah, that's right. Like Donald Tusk. They keep saying, he's going to come back. I mean, he's still an active in Polish politics. They're going to, bring them back. And it's throughout. You're going to wheel them out at various times. or or then promote them, kick them upstairs. You have some big job.
Sikorsky.
Radek Sikorski, exactly. So what does he do? He's in the European Parliament now, isn't he, or something?
Oh, and he's probably on a number of boards. And
I think so. That's right.
And waiting in the wings.
Waiting in the wings, exactly. So, and
plus playing a major role to fight the conservatives in Poland. He's
exactly that's right. Exactly that's intramural battle. But the intramural battle doesn't have anything to do with foreign policy, because on the foreign policy, I would absolutely agree. And it was Sikorsky who kind of created the Eastern Partnership. The Eastern Partnership was the first of this Polish ambition of, hey, we can be this, the numeral.
Karl Bild and Radek Sikorsky.
Exactly, yeah, and bringing in all these countries. I mean, Belarus was also brought in originally. It didn't work with Lukashenko, but it was still part of the idea. We'll get Belarus into this Eastern Partnership. Again, what is the purpose of any of these things? Just direct them against Russia. There was never there was no partnership other than animus towards Russia.
But that's a career building strategy.
Exactly.
Hating Russia is like an epiphenomenon. It's like, do you notice breathing air, George? No, we just breathe it. Okay. Yes. That is the facade. The canvas, as it were, and everything else is that how can being part of this elite, interconnected, how can I move up the chain with my friends? Because 20 years ago when we were all working for Soros, we were doing this, and now he's over there in Brussels, I'm here in Warsaw, and he's in Vilnius, and it's a very closed circle, and they all protect each other. Okay, and then you have the entrance, Annalena Baerbock, she's making her debut, and Liz Truss is hoping that her screw up won't be held against her.
That's right. It is a kind of an interesting thing. Liz Truss and Annalena Baerbock both came out strongly against Macron's statements. But it's interesting which of the two has a future within the apparat. Well, Liz Truss, I think, doesn't have a future. But I think that she kind of picked the wrong side. She wanted to be a Thatcherite. The new kind of European elite, they don't really like Thatcherism. Also, Britain isn't in the EU anymore, so there's a limited scope for promotion. Annalena Baerbock, however, she's really absolutely in the meat of the whole green woke Europe. She's got a big future ahead of her.
See, Liz Truss, she wanted to be like Thatcher without Thatcherism. Yes. Which doesn't work. Sorry. No, you can't do that. All right. Yeah. The persona versus the policy. Okay. Yeah. But Annalena Baerbock, well, she's the ascendant. I mean, she's definitely on. I mean, the way she and you gotta give it to her. She is so devoted. She is so psychologically, pathologically devoted that she'll go right to China and say, nope, Taiwan is important to us.
That's it. Yeah.
I mean, it took at least guts to do that. Okay. Right. I mean, that took real guts. I mean, because it shows her patrons in Brussels and in Washington that she is a loyal devotee. Okay. She'll go into the den of the lion, and she will do what is necessary. Yeah. Okay.
That's right. Exactly. And she did everything that the Americans wanted. Yeah. Talked about Taiwan. Accused China of not engaging in fair trade. She talked about the Uyghurs, and of course she talked about condemned their support for Putin. Exactly. She did all of that. Hey, now give me my big fat job. It's a very interesting that Germany didn't used to be like that. Germany used to be kind of we're going to be come to agreement and blah blah. Stability, secure, blah blah. Try to keep everyone pleased. No, she's not. She has that acerbic Mike Pompeo American way of doing things.
And before, it was the national interests of our partners within institutional frameworks like NATO, even the European Union. No, it's our values, our people that would have our values. See, what they're doing is they're jettisoning the nation state. And what it is that they're promoting an elite group of people that have no interest in their nation state or their voters. Okay, they're all devoted to an ideology. Okay, and Annalena Baerbock, she is the toast of the town right now.
Okay? That's right. No, that's right. The interesting thing, of course, is that the ideology is one that offers nothing to the masses. I mean, this is where it's far inferior to communism, socialism, because at least it promised something to the masses, you know, a future of abundance or equality or justice. They don't offer anything. They're just offer, you'll be eating bugs.
In today's context, it's not even cheap bread.
Right, exactly. Oh, and you know, don't have any children. You know, we got to start cutting back our population. So it's like, you know, and you know, so that, you know, so it's just offering, you know, pessimism, gloom, lower living standards. That's why, you know, they have to stick together, because, you know, if you give people the chance to vote, you know, they're not going to vote for these.
You need a whole crowd of people that are completely devoted to convince you that you should only bathe once a week. Okay.
Yeah, that's right.
How we are. We're going back 200 years.
Yeah,
okay?
yeah.
No, it is a new serfdom. Okay.
Yes.
We have the educated literati. We have this accredited, completely useless a group of people that know what's best for humanity. That's okay. Right. And it's all and then they like to go throw right back into the Middle Ages. It's about good and evil. Okay. Yeah. Which is really interesting, because modernity, when you think about the totality of modernity, they're saying, no, you don't think in terms of that. That's an archaic category. And now they've brought it back. Yeah. Okay. I keep calling it, everything is a purity test. Okay. And it's immaterial about the impact and outcome of these policies. Right. It's your purity that counts.
Yeah, no, that's right. It is a very interesting contrast, a sort of the Manichaean view of the world that they have reintroduced. Democracy, totalitarianism, or democracy, authoritarianism. You know, we have values, they don't, and you know, it's an amazing thing. You know, back when it was, I guess, in the 70s. People were complaining, hey, we've all become Nietzschean, we're all kind of revaluation of values. Somehow there's no longer good, there's no longer evil, there's no longer absolutes, and everything is just a situational. Now we got this apparently, good and evil, but of course they're not good and evil in any ways in which people can understand in any way that it's related to their lives. These are just abstractions like Putin, the Kremlin, Russia, Beijing. That's what you're supposed to hate, even though without ever really explaining what it is about them. This is what you should be thinking about. So it's a kind of a very strange kind of Manichaeanism that they've introduced.
Yeah, because isn't it better to lull the masses into being afraid than actually have some really kind of solid policy recommendation. These people are not policy driven, okay? They're politically, ideologically driven. Policy, I mean, and that's why at least we look for the Germans. At least the Germans could get the policy right, okay? Don't let them have politics. No, I agree, okay? Policy, okay? And now the Germans are leading the ideological crusade, okay? They've dropped out of the problem-solving thing and going all the way back to the Poles. The Poles to see this as their chance for their part of the elite to make a leap forward, okay? Yeah. Because they have the ideological wisdom, because we know the Russians, we'll explain them to you, okay? I had so many Poles and at university and graduate student would tell me that, Peter, you have to understand. You don't understand them, we do.
Yeah, so this new Europe is not something that is going to offer anything very appealing to the rest of Europe. And I think that
doesn't solve any problems.
It doesn't solve any problems. So Donald Rumsfeld's idea of exchanging old Europe for new Europe, it's kind of ended up in disaster. He thought he was being very clever, because Americans have been sick to death of the old Europe, which was never enthusiastic enough about what the Americans are doing. Hey, now we've got this new bunch. Now where we are, go much closer to nuclear war than ever been in the days of the old Europe. So, thanks, but no thanks.
All a choice, all a craven choice. All right, everybody, that's kind of our extended update of what's going on, well, with the polls, the Bucharest Nine, and our darling Annalena Baerbock. We keep an eye on her. All right, everybody, this is A Gaggle with Peter and George. We're on Locals, so please go to thegaggle.locals.com. Please visit our store. And since it's Sunday, the time frame for George's live stream on Tuesday just came that closer.
Exactly. It's now narrowed. So please, if you can hold on to next Tuesday, 3 p.m. Eastern Time, please join me for another edition of the Gaggle live stream. So come with comments, criticisms, suggestions on the way out the door. Think about Buddy, because he's now inventing himself. Hey, I want the old Buddy versus the new Buddy.
New Buddy.
Yeah, the new Buddy is going to take a much tougher line on the tip jar. So we prefer the old Buddy. So if you want the old Buddy back, see if you've got a few bob in your pocket, whip them out, dunk them in this tip jar, and maybe we can have old Buddy back. So we're very grateful for all of your help, friendship, and support. The more you're able to donate, the more of these videos we can make, the more we can improve the technology. And above all, we'll have the old Buddy back. So remember, if you like the Gaggle, please like, share, and subscribe. See you soon. Bye.